Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to our read aloud of Bram Stoker's Dracula. We are up to chapter 12, which is ominously, very ironically entitled Merry Christmas. At length, towards noon, upon the final dismissal of the ship's riggers, and after the Pequod had been hauled out from the wharf, and after the ever-thoughtful Charity had come off in a whaleboat with her last gifts, a nightcap for Stubb, the second mate, her brother-in-law, and a spare Bible for the steward. After all this, the two captains, Peleg and Bildad, issued from the cabin, and turning to the chief mate, Peleg said, "Now, Mr. Starbuck, are you sure everything's right? Captain Ahab is all ready. Just spoke to him. Nothing more to be got from shore, eh? Well, then, call all hands. Muster 'em aft here, blast 'em." "No need for profane words, however great the hurry, Peleg," said Bildad. "But away with thee, friend Starbuck, and do our bidding." "How now?" "Here upon the very point of starting for the voyage. Captain Peleg and Captain Bildad were going it with a high hand on the quarterdeck, just as if they were to be joint commanders at sea, as well as to all appearances at port. As for Captain Ahab, no sign of him was yet to be seen, only they said he was in the cabin. But then the idea was that his presence was by no means necessary in getting the ship under way, and steering her well out to sea. Indeed, as that was not at all his proper business, but the pilot's, and as he was not yet completely recovered, so they said, therefore Captain Ahab stayed below. This is Ishmael, making extraordinary excuses. The idea that a captain would not be on deck when his ship leaves harbor is unthinkable. But we're told that Captain Ahab is still recovering, although his two fellow captains, possibly erstwhile shipmates, are running cover for him. Both of them have now defended him. And all this seemed natural enough, especially as in the merchant service many captains never show themselves on deck for a considerable time after heaving up the anchor, but remain over the cabin table having a farewell merrymaking with their shore friends before they quit the ship for good with the pilot. But there was not much chance to think over the matter, for Captain Peleg was now alive. He seemed to do most of the talking and commanding, and not Bildad. "Aft here, you sons, ye bachelors," he cried, as the sailors lingered at the mainmast. "Mr. Starbuck, drive them aft." "Strike the tent there," was the next order. As I hinted before, the whalebone Marquis was never pitched except at port, and on board the Pequod for 30 years, the order to strike the tent was well known as the next thing to heaving up the anchor. "Man the capstan, blood and thunder, jump," was the next command, and the crew sprang to the handspikes. Now, in getting under way, the station generally occupied by the pilot is the forward part of the ship, and here Bildad, who, with Peleg, be it known, in addition to his other offices, was one of the licensed pilots of the port. He being suspected to have got himself made a pilot in order to save the Nantucket pilot fee to all the ships he was concerned in, for he never piloted any other craft. And he's got to what we would now say return value to his shareholders. If he can keep his pilot certificate, and spare them the fee of being piloted out of dock, so much the better. So much more money for them. Bildad, I say, might now be seen actively engaged in looking over the bows for the approaching anchor, and at intervals singing what seemed a dismal stave of psalmody to cheer the hands at the windlass, who roared forth some sort of chorus about the girls in Booble Alley, with hearted goodwill. Nevertheless, not 3 days previous, Bildad had told them that no profane songs would be allowed on board the Pequod, particularly in getting under way, and Charity, his sister, had placed a small choice copy of Watts in the seaman's berth. That's a famous starchy set of sermons. Meantime, overseeing the other part of the ship, Captain Peleg ripped and swore astern in the most frightful manner. I almost thought he would sink the ship before the anchor could be got up. Involuntarily, I paused in my handspike and told Queequeg to do the same, thinking of the perils we both ran in starting on the voyage with such a devil for a pilot. If I were you, I'd be worried about the devil you have for a captain. I was comforting myself, however, with the thought that in pious Bildad might be found some salvation, spite of his 777th lay, and when I felt a sudden sharp poke in my rear, and turning round, was horrified at the apparition of Captain Peleg in the act of withdrawing his leg from my immediate vicinity. That was my first kick. And some of you who are totally unfamiliar with 19th century seamanship might be amazed at that. But if you're a hand, the pilot, the officers on deck, they could make free, either with a tool, an actual baton that they carried specifically for that purpose, or with their feet, just kick you. And Peleg has noticed that both Ishmael and Queequeg have stopped turning the handspike that raises the anchor. So he kicks Ishmael. I don't think you'd want to kick Queequeg. Is that the way to heave a merchant spike? In the merchant service? He roared, "Spring, thou sheephead, spring and bring thy backbone. Why don't ye spring, I say, all of you, spring. Quohog, spring," that's his nickname for Queequeg. "Thou chap with the red whiskers, spring there, Scot chap. Spring, thou green pants, spring, I say, all of ye, and spring your eyes out." And so saying, he moved along the windlass, and here and there, using his legs very freely, while imperturbable Bildad kept leading off with his psalmody. Thinks I, Captain Peleg must have been drinking something today. At last the anchor was up, and the sails were set, and off we glided. It was a short, cold Christmas, and as the short northern day merged into night, we found ourselves almost broad upon the wintry ocean, whose freezing spray cased us in ice, as in polished armor. The long rows of teeth on the bulwarks glistened in the moonlight, and like the very white ivory tusks of some huge elephant, with curving icicles depended from the bows. Lank Bildad, as pilot, headed the first watch, and ever and anon, as the old craft dived into the green seas and sent up the shivering frost all over her, and the winds howled, and the cordage rang, his steady notes were heard. "Sweet fields beyond the swelling flood stand dressed in living green. So to the Jews old Canaan stood when Jordan rolled between." Never did those sweet words sound more sweetly to me than then. They were full of hope and fruition. Spite of this frigid winter night, the boisterous Atlantic, spite of my wet feet and wetter jacket, there was yet, it still seemed to me, many a pleasant haven in store, and meads and glades so eternally vernal, that the grass shot up by the spring, untrodden, unwilted, remains at midsummer. At last we gained such an offering that the two pilots were needed no longer. The stout sailboat that had accompanied us began ranging alongside. To take off the pilots, Bildad and Peleg are not going on this voyage, but they want to see the ship not only out of harbor, but well on the way to the sea roads. It was curious and not unpleasing how Peleg and Bildad were affected at this juncture, especially Captain Bildad. For loath to depart, yet very loath to leave for good, a ship bound on so long and perilous a voyage beyond both stormy capes, a ship in which some thousands of his hard-earned dollars were invested, a ship in which an old shipmate sailed as captain, a man almost as old as he, once more starting to encounter all the terrors of the pitiless jaw, loath to say goodbye to a thing so every way brimful of every interest to him. Poor old Bildad lingered long, paced the deck with anxious strides, ran down into the cabin to speak again another farewell there, again came on deck, and looked to windward, looked towards the wide and endless waters only bounded by the far-off eastern continents, looked towards the land, looked aloft, looked right and left, looked everywhere and nowhere, and at last, mechanically coiling a rope upon its pin, convulsively grasped stout Peleg by the hand, and holding up a lantern, for a moment stood gazing heroically in his face, as much to say, "Nevertheless, friend Peleg, I can stand it. Yes, I can." As for Peleg himself, he took it more like a philosopher, but for all his philosophy there was a tear twinkling in his eye when the lanterns came too close, and he too did not a little run from the cabin to deck, now a word below, now a word with Starbuck, the chief mate. But at last he turned to his comrade with a final sort of look about him. "Captain Bildad, come, old shipmate, we must go. Back to the main yard there. Boat ahoy! Stand by, come close alongside now. Careful, careful. Come, Bildad boy, say your last. Luck to ye, Starbuck. Luck to you, Mr. Stubb. Luck to you, Mr. Flask. Goodbye, and good luck to you all. And this day, 3 years, I'll have a hot supper smoking for you in the old Nantucket. Hurry and away." "God bless ye, and have ye in his holy keeping, men," murmured old Bildad, almost incoherently. "I hope you'll have fine weather now, so that Captain Ahab may soon be moving about ye. A pleasant sun is all he needs, and you'll have plenty of them in the tropic voyage ye go. Be careful in the hunt, ye mates. Don't stave the boats needlessly, ye harpooners. Good white cedar plank is raised full 3% within the year. Don't forget your prayers, either. Mr. Starbuck, mind that Cooper don't waste the spare staves. Oh, the salt needles are in the green locker. Don't whale it too much on a Lord's Day, men, and don't miss a fair chance either. That's rejecting heaven's good gifts. Have an eye to the molasses teas, Mr. Stubb, and it was a little leaky, I thought. If you touch at the islands, Mr. Flask, beware of fornication. Goodbye, goodbye. Don't keep the cheese too long down in the hole, Mr. Starbuck. It'll spoil. Be careful with the butter. 20 cents per the pound, and it'll mind ye if... And he can't stop. It's his comrade. It's his friend who has to stop him. Come, Captain Bildad. Stop palavering. Away. And with that, Peleg hurried him over the side. Both dropped into the boat. Ship and boat diverged. Cold, damp night breeze blew between. A screaming gull flew overhead. The two hulls wildly rolled, and we gave 3 hearty cheers and blindly plunged like fate into the lone Atlantic. And this is doubly ironic. It's wonderfully done, but it's doubly ironic. This is the point of no return. Just to be clear. I mean, it's made clear in the chapter. This is the point of no return. The last boat, the very last one, the tender that took Charity off at the edge of the harbor, long since gone. The attendant boat that takes the 2 captain pilots off, long since gone now. There is no more hope until the next mooring for Queequeg and Ishmael or anyone else on board. They are facing the Atlantic. So in that sense, the title is ironic in that it's a Merry Christmas, but it's ironic in a couple of other ways too. One is that Peleg and Bildad can barely tear themselves away, even though they know that whaling vessels are awful. Whaling voyages are awful. The vessels themselves, they are not governed by the rules of the Royal Navy. They are the total tyrannical suzerainty of the captain. If you get a bad captain or a crazy captain, you're out of luck. And also the voyages are terrible. The ships are messy. The ships are usually not all that seaworthy. They're made for only one purpose, and that is to go out and hunt and murder people who are older, wiser, have a more elaborate culture, more caring emotional lives than anyone on board, and harvest their bodies while they're living, while their loved ones watch. And also the voyages are long. You heard just then, 3 years from now, I'll have a supper ready for you in Nantucket. And that was an average. Whaling ships could be gone longer than that. You were gone on this island with your crew and captain for a long time. Especially longer the scarcer whales became. So it's ironic in that sense that Bildad and Peleg would want to stay. They clearly want to stay. They would clearly like to be younger men, able to go on this voyage. Even though they have comfortable lives no longer as whaling crew members, but as whaling factors. They are now businessmen. They are factors in whaling enterprises, which is why they keep mentioning the cost of items. Because this is, in addition to being a very heroic, in a way, and certainly a very picturesque and dangerous endeavor, this is also a gigantic business venture. With lots and lots of people involved. Lots and lots of investors involved, including investors in Boston, not on the islands, that have never seen the Pequot. These two are responsible for them. So that it's ironic in that way, that these two men who have comfortable lives ashore now are right at the edge of the ocean and want to go. And it's ironic in another way as well, of course, because it's a Christmas and Ishmael can allow himself to feel a little bit of optimism, and there are prayers aplenty, and no one guesses, no one on board guesses that everyone on this ship is doomed. They think they know their future. A long, long, hard voyage, but at the end, with all the luck in the world, with minimal loss of life, you pull back into Nantucket Harbor 3 years from now with your holds full of whale oil, which at the time was the most valuable sustenance in the world. And its value is assessed, and every one of you has a lay. Every one of you has a portion. All the investors get the big portions. Of course, Peleg and Bildad get big portions. Captain Ahab gets a big portion. But you, as a crew member, if you manage to live and survive it all, you get a percentage of that, enough to set you up for the rest of your life if your voyage is very successful. That's what Ishmael and all of his crewmates are thinking, are hoping, is their future. The worst possible scenario is the story they've all heard stories about whaling ships that came back with stove cargo, or that met with disaster, or where there was large loss of life, where the layout wasn't very big when they got back, or even the ships that sank. They think the odds are in their favor. They cannot imagine what's waiting for them because what's waiting for them has never happened before. Amazing. And this is it. This is a chapter where we are now committed. We are off into the... How did our narrator put it? The night breeze blew between. A screaming gull flew overhead. The two hulls wildly rolled. We gave three-hearted cheers and blindly plunged like fate into the lone Atlantic. All right, so we will wrap it up there and meet again next time. Thank you.